Settle on the type of person you want to be and stick to it, whether alone or in company. The difference between strength and decline is measured in repetition. Every day you either reinforce your order or feed your decay. You know what must be done, yet you hesitate. The hesitation is the fracture. The mind that negotiates with itself begins to rot from within. Consistency is not motivation, it is war. Each morning you wake, you face the same enemy: comfort, doubt, distraction, and every delay is surrender. Discipline begins in silence. No announcement, no witness, no applause. Just the cold act of doing what must be done before the mind has a chance to resist. The Stoic rises by command, not by feeling. Their law is internal and absolute. They act as if every motion carries the weight of their destiny, because it does. The one who obeys their own order becomes untouchable, calm, relentless, impossible to weaken. You cannot build greatness through bursts of effort. You build it through repetition until the act itself becomes identity. Force yourself to be consistent this year, not when you feel like it, not when it's easy, every day without pause, without exception. Each repetition is a declaration. I will not fall back into weakness. I will not betray the structure I've built. This year, discipline will not be an option. It will be your nature. Inconsistency is the silent erosion of potential. It does not announce itself with chaos or drama. It begins quietly, with one missed day, one delayed task, one excuse that feels reasonable. Then it multiplies. What once was discipline becomes disorder. The Stoic understands that every lapse compounds, that entropy is the natural direction of life unless effort reverses it. The world drifts toward disorder. The mind must push back. To force oneself to be consistent is not a slogan. It is a war. The enemy is not laziness alone. It is the whisper of comfort. It is the rationalization that today is too full, that tomorrow is better suited for focus. It is the decay that hides behind self-forgiveness when no correction follows. Consistency begins where emotion ends. It is not driven by motivation, but by an internal law that cannot be negotiated. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being." The Stoic does not seek inspiration. They execute duty. Every act of inconsistency is an act of self-betrayal. When the Stoic commits to an action, it becomes part of their character. Failure to act becomes an injury to the self. This is why consistency is not about productivity, it is about identity. The one who keeps promises to themselves builds sovereignty. The one who breaks them dissolves it. Self-trust is not found in emotion, but in proof, the evidence of repetition under resistance. Inconsistency thrives in moments of indecision. The untrained mind debates action until energy is spent in thought. The disciplined mind moves. To the Stoic, delay is corrosion. When a task is left incomplete, it lingers in the psyche as mental noise, draining focus. Seneca wrote that life is long enough if one knows how to use it. The inconsistent person half-lives in fragments, a day of intent followed by a day of decay. The consistent live as a single motion forward. Consistency must be forced. It will not appear on its own. Discipline is not the product of clarity, but of confrontation, a refusal to negotiate with weakness. When the body resists, the will must override. The body obeys what the mind repeats. Each repetition forges neural obedience. Each avoidance reinforces fragility. The Stoic trains not to feel capable, but to become inevitable. There is no neutrality in self-discipline. Every day strengthens one side of the internal war. Either the disciplined self wins, or the indulgent self does. Each decision tilts the balance of the future. Consistency is not about grand moments, but the accumulation of small victories that appear trivial but are decisive. A single act of discipline each day redefines the person across time. To force consistency is to embrace monotony. The Stoic understands that greatness hides in the unremarkable. The world glorifies results. The philosopher honors repetition. Every morning of resistance mastered, every night of temptation resisted. These are invisible triumphs that sculpt destiny. What others call routine, the Stoic calls ritual. The mind resists what it fears will confine it. Consistency feels like captivity to the undisciplined because it restricts impulse. Yet that restriction is the birth of freedom. The inconsistent are slaves to their moods. The consistent command them. Freedom is not doing what one feels, it is being unaffected by feeling. This reversal of control is what builds inner peace. To maintain consistency, one must eliminate the illusion of choice. Every decision drains energy. The Stoic reduces variables. They simplify their day to preserve willpower for high-value actions. This is not rigidity, it is optimization. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly. Structure accelerates growth by removing friction. Every system of order is a weapon against chaos. The modern mind is trained for novelty. It seeks stimulation, not mastery. Consistency feels foreign because the world rewards distraction. The Stoic must reverse this conditioning. They must train the brain to crave repetition, to find pride in the routine that others flee. When the mind begins to associate repetition with strength, discipline becomes self-reinforcing. Every day, resistance renews. The Stoic expects this. They do not wait for a perfect season to begin. They begin while it is imperfect. They do not romanticize the process. They fortify it. Consistency is not built through comfort, but through the precise calibration of effort. A routine becomes unbreakable when it no longer depends on mood. Fatigue will come. Doubt will whisper that discipline no longer matters. The Stoic must see these as tests, not interruptions. Each wave of resistance is proof of life's natural friction. The disciplined person sees struggle as confirmation they are still engaged in the process of mastery. To force consistency this year means to live in constant confrontation with that friction until resistance breaks. Time magnifies what one repeats. The same hours that destroy the inconsistent refine the consistent. Small habits multiply into structure. Structure hardens into identity. Consistency is not only about what is done, it is about who one becomes by doing it. The disciplined person builds a second nature that no longer debates commitment. It simply executes. To be consistent is to operate by law, not preference. The Stoic sees each act of discipline as an oath to themselves, a promise that does not require emotion to renew. This internal law must be absolute. When one says they will act, it is done. No emotion, no delay, no reconsideration. Such reliability makes a person dangerous because they can be trusted even by their own future self. The body follows patterns. The mind must direct them. Without direction, those patterns decay. A Stoic trains not for external praise, but for internal precision. Every act becomes a demonstration of control. The consistent person does not seek balance, they seek alignment. Balance implies compromise. Alignment implies mastery. Consistency reveals character. It strips away the illusions of intention. Many speak of discipline, few live it. Many plan, few execute. The Stoic measures worth not in desire, but in delivery. They do not celebrate effort, they measure results. The measure of mastery is repetition without degradation of quality. To force consistency is to make repetition sacred. It transforms the mundane into an arena for self-command. Every workout, every writing session, every hour of focus becomes a ritual of conquest over self. The Stoic does not aim to enjoy it, they aim to conquer it. Enjoyment comes later through the pride of completion. Consistency is not perfection, it is recovery. The Stoic knows that lapses will occur, but does not allow them to expand. They correct instantly. Delay is the seed of regression. The faster one returns to order, the less entropy accumulates. What separates the disciplined from the inconsistent is not absence of failure, but speed of recovery. Each day is a battlefield. The weapons are habits. The armor is mindset. The enemy is impulse. When one trains the mind to obey command, the war shifts from chaos to structure. The Stoic builds daily fortifications, routines, systems, rituals that guard against emotional storms. They win not by intensity, but by constancy. Discipline without purpose burns out. The Stoic ties consistency to principle. They remind themselves why they act, not through emotion, but through alignment with values. Seneca said, "If one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. Consistency without direction drifts. Consistency with principle endures." Forcing consistency requires awareness of internal sabotage. The mind will disguise comfort as logic. It will suggest delay as preparation. It will present emotion as truth. The Stoic cuts through these illusions by measuring everything against principle. If the action aligns with their purpose, it proceeds. If it does not, it ends. Simplicity destroys deception. In a world addicted to outcomes, the Stoic obsesses over process. They understand that the outcome is inevitable if the process is perfect. Consistency becomes the quiet engine of destiny, unseen by most, but unstoppable. The Stoic does not chase growth. They engineer it through daily repetition. Every year begins with ambition. Few end with transformation. The difference lies in enforcement. The disciplined enforce their standards through repetition. They do not negotiate with the past version of themselves. Each day is a renewal of command. Force becomes habit. Habit becomes ease. To be consistent this year means to break the cycle of temporary resolve. It means converting intention into law. It means replacing self-pity with proof. Every sunrise is an opportunity to test one's loyalty to principle. The Stoic uses mornings as checkpoints of identity. They ask one question: will I obey my own command today? Discipline is not about motivation, it is about maintenance. Motivation fades with mood. Maintenance persists through structure. The Stoic designs their life as a system of reinforcement. Every element, sleep, exercise, reflection, work, feeds the same central goal: control. Through this design, consistency ceases to depend on emotion and becomes environmental. When fatigue arrives, the Stoic recalls their purpose. They remember that each act of repetition is not about the task itself, but the person it builds. The mind must be conditioned to equate discipline with strength, not burden. This shift transforms exhaustion into pride. To persist when no one watches is the mark of quiet greatness. Consistency requires accountability. The Stoic does not depend on praise or recognition. They hold themselves to a standard that no one else enforces. To fail this standard is to lose alignment. To uphold it is to remain sovereign. Sovereignty is not dominance over others. It is dominion over self. Every habit rewires identity. The Stoic chooses their future through repetition. If the act is small, the consequence is not. Each hour compounds. A single missed day is not neutral. It reverses momentum. Thus, consistency must be protected as sacred territory. It is the foundation of all Stoic strength. The mind will attempt rebellion, it will demand novelty, it will resent restraint. The Stoic acknowledges this rebellion and moves regardless. Emotion is information, not instruction. The disciplined mind acts independently of its weather. Stability is built through indifference to fluctuation. When consistency becomes instinct, life simplifies. Decision-making reduces, noise fades, focus intensifies. The Stoic experiences this as serenity, not absence of effort, but absence of confusion. Every action aligns with the internal law. This unity between intent and execution produces unshakable confidence. To force consistency this year means to abandon negotiation. It means to live without the luxury of excuse. It means to transform repetition into proof of existence. The Stoic understands that what is repeated daily becomes sacred. What is neglected dies. Life itself obeys the rhythm one enforces. The year will pass whether one acts or not. Time is impartial. The difference will be in the accumulation of days either disciplined or wasted. The Stoic refuses to surrender another cycle to indifference. They understand that the cost of inconsistency is not delay, it is erosion. The self one could become fades with every excuse. The only cure is force. Consistency is a quiet revolution. It transforms chaos into order, weakness into control, time into strength. It is not glamorous, not loud, not easy. It is the invisible architecture of mastery. To force oneself to be consistent this year is to declare war on every form of internal decay. The Stoic wins not by chance, but by repetition, until discipline becomes their nature and inconsistency becomes impossible. Identity is not discovered. It is built through repetition. The Stoic understands that consistency is the forge in which character takes shape. What one does each day becomes who one is. There is no separation between behavior and being. Each act of discipline reinforces an internal architecture, forming the patterns that define existence. To transform consistency into identity is to reach the point where discipline no longer requires decision, it becomes nature. At the beginning, discipline feels external. It is forced, deliberate, heavy. The mind must drag the body forward through resistance. Over time, repetition carves neural grooves. What once required effort becomes automatic. The Stoic does not celebrate this ease. They recognize it as proof of internal alignment. Consistency is not about endless strain, but about integration, the merging of intention and action into a single motion. When consistency becomes identity, life simplifies. The mind no longer debates what must be done. The command is internalized. The person does not wake up wondering whether they will act. They simply move. This is the highest form of freedom. Freedom from indecision, from emotional fluctuation, from self-doubt. The Stoic has become the act itself. Their nature and their actions are identical. Every repetition is a declaration of identity. The one who trains daily declares they are disciplined. The one who writes daily declares they are a creator. The one who reflects daily declares they are a philosopher. The Stoic does not need external validation for this identity. It is earned through repetition. As Seneca observed, the best proof of virtue is found in consistent behavior, not in claims or words. To reach inevitability, the Stoic removes friction from action. They engineer their environment to reinforce who they are. The disciplined person structures their world so that their values are embedded in their surroundings. Tools are visible, distractions are hidden, routines are fixed. Each element of the environment whispers the same command: continue. In this design, consistency is not willed, it is supported. Identity solidifies through ritual. Rituals are anchors that stabilize behavior under stress. When chaos rises, ritual preserves order. The Stoic repeats their practices not to impress others, but to reinforce internal law. Meditation at dawn, training at fixed hours, writing before sleep. These are not tasks, they are declarations of control. Each act repeats the same truth: I command myself. The transformation from effort to identity is gradual. It requires endurance through the dull seasons when no progress is visible. The inconsistent break here. The Stoic persists. They understand that every repetition during stillness strengthens the invisible muscle of inevitability. Progress hides inside maintenance. Growth hides inside repetition. The one who endures monotony becomes unstoppable. Inevitability is the end of choice. It is not rigidity but mastery. When the Stoic reaches this state, discipline is no longer a negotiation. It is reflex. There is no hesitation, no internal dialogue. The act happens because it is who they are. To others, it looks effortless. To the Stoic, it feels inevitable. The distance between intention and execution disappears. Identity built on consistency cannot be stolen. It cannot be lost in distraction or external chaos. The world may shift, circumstances may change, but the inner structure remains intact. The Stoic carries order within themselves. They are self-contained systems of direction. Seneca said that the wise person is content within themselves, not because the world is easy, but because they are internally organized. To become inevitable, one must break the addiction to emotion. Feelings fluctuate, discipline must not. The Stoic learns to act independently of mood. When tired, they act. When uninspired, they act. When distracted, they return. Emotion loses control because the command lies deeper than feeling. This detachment is not suppression, it is hierarchy. The will commands, emotion follows. The repetition of duty creates spiritual gravity. Each act of discipline adds weight to the self. The more one honors their word, the heavier their presence becomes. People trust the consistent because their word predicts action. This predictability is not boring, it is power. The Stoic becomes a fixed point in a spinning world. Their stillness becomes influence. Consistency into identity transforms how time is perceived. The inconsistent see time as something they manage. The Stoic sees it as something they command. Hours are no longer units to fill, but moments to reinforce selfhood. Each day repeats the same law. The identity becomes immortal through structure. The Stoic does not age into weakness. They age into precision. Inevitability emerges when self-discipline outlives emotion. The consistent no longer ask if they feel ready. They ask if the act aligns with their principle. The answer is always yes. To act is to affirm existence. To hesitate is to fracture it. Every hesitation weakens structure. The Stoic eliminates hesitation by predefining conduct. In every circumstance, they know what they do. The world respects inevitability because it cannot argue with proof. Words can be challenged, patterns cannot. A consistent person becomes predictable in power. Their reputation extends beyond effort. Their reliability becomes currency. People rely on them because they rely on themselves. Consistency thus transforms into influence, not through persuasion, but through demonstration. When consistency fuses with identity, failure changes meaning. A mistake is not a collapse, it is an interruption. The Stoic does not identify with failure because identity is rooted in repetition, not in outcome. They return to form. This return is automatic. Inconsistency breaks people because their identity is external. The Stoic remains unbroken because their identity is internal. To sustain identity, reflection is essential. The Stoic examines patterns daily. They measure alignment between intention and execution. Reflection prevents decay. Without reflection, consistency can become mechanical and lose consciousness. The disciplined mind refines its methods constantly, ensuring that every act still serves principle. This is how identity evolves without corruption. At full integration, the Stoic no longer disciplines themselves, they express themselves. The act of discipline becomes expression of being. Training, writing, thinking, all become extensions of essence. Consistency no longer feels imposed, it feels inevitable. This is mastery, when order becomes identity and effort becomes expression. Every act carries symbolism. To the untrained, repetition is monotony. To the Stoic, repetition is meditation. It is a reminder that life is motion sustained by force of will. Each breath, each movement, each decision is proof of control. This awareness turns daily tasks into acts of philosophy. Life becomes training. Inevitability is not arrogance, it is certainty earned through repetition. The Stoic does not need to announce progress. Their life speaks for them. They move with calm inevitability because nothing within them resists. The internal war is over. What remains is command. The person who has become consistent is not chasing success, they embody it. Success becomes a byproduct of order. Goals are executed, not pursued. Each objective is reduced to a set of repetitions until completion is unavoidable. The Stoic does not hope for results, they engineer them. When consistency becomes identity, the concept of failure dissolves. The Stoic cannot truly fail because they always return to process. Even defeat reinforces discipline. It becomes another repetition of recovery. This immunity to failure creates peace. The consistent person is untouchable because their foundation is internal, not circumstantial. The journey from discipline to inevitability redefines effort. What was once resistance becomes rhythm. The Stoic feels no conflict between what must be done and who they are. Their days flow as one continuous act of obedience to principle. This is the essence of inner harmony, to want only what one must do. Inevitability demands humility. It requires silence. The consistent do not boast because their power is self-evident. They do not need recognition because the act itself is reward. The Stoic finds fulfillment in the structure itself, a quiet pride that no external praise can equal. Identity built through consistency creates legacy. The person who acts with precision leaves patterns behind. These patterns inspire others long after words fade. A disciplined life becomes a philosophy in motion, a living text written through repetition. The Stoic seeks to become such a text, a life that teaches through example. Consistency turns chaos into code. The Stoic deciphers life by repeating correct actions until they become natural law. Once law is internalized, no external influence can destabilize it. This is true autonomy. Not independence from others, but independence from self-conflict. To maintain inevitability, the Stoic must protect their standards. Every compromise weakens identity. Standards are non-negotiable boundaries that preserve internal order. The disciplined person enforces them quietly but absolutely. They do not announce limits, they live within them. Such containment produces immense strength. When identity reaches this level of solidity, peace replaces urgency. The Stoic no longer rushes. They move with precision. Each act is deliberate. Consistency has matured into calm inevitability, the steady gravity of a person who cannot deviate. This is not slowness, it is certainty. The mind that has achieved this integration no longer fears chaos. External disorder cannot breach internal law. The Stoic stands as a fortress of repetition, unchanged by the storm, unmoved by praise, uninterested in doubt. Their life radiates quiet inevitability, an aura of order that others feel without explanation. Consistency transformed into identity creates permanence. Habits outlive motivation. Identity outlives habit. Once the structure of the self is complete, effort becomes effortless. Every act reinforces the same truth. I am what I repeatedly do. As Aristotle said, excellence is not an act, but a habit. The Stoic extends this further. Excellence is the self. When the year ends, the disciplined do not look back in regret. They see evidence, the accumulation of acts that became identity. Each repetition was a brick, each decision a wall. The structure stands complete, unshaken by the passage of time. Consistency was the builder. Identity is the monument. This is inevitability. When the act and the actor are one, when the command has no opposition, when every day repeats perfection not out of effort, but out of nature. To force consistency until it becomes identity is to reach the final evolution of discipline, the moment where self-mastery ceases to be a pursuit and becomes existence itself. The highest form of discipline is self-command. To govern emotion, impulse, and reaction is to rule an empire within. The Stoic does not aim to suppress feeling, but to structure it, to assign every emotion its proper place under reason. Without control, emotion becomes chaos. With command, it becomes power. Emotional neutrality is not emptiness, it is composure refined to the point of precision. The modern person confuses feeling deeply with living fully. The Stoic knows the opposite. The more one is enslaved by emotion, the less one lives with intention. Anger, fear, excitement, despair, these are useful only when disciplined. The Stoic trains to see emotion as data, not direction. They learn to experience everything and obey nothing but principle. Self-command begins with observation. The untrained mind reacts before it perceives. The disciplined mind creates space between stimulus and response. Within that space lies power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This realization is not philosophical abstraction, it is psychological mastery. The first test of self-command is irritation. Small inconveniences reveal large weaknesses. A delay, a criticism, a mistake. Each becomes an opportunity to measure composure. The Stoic does not allow emotion to dictate conduct. They respond from order, not from impulse. Every reaction that violates this order is a crack in self-governance. The aim is not suppression, but redirection, to let emotion serve logic, not replace it. The second test is desire. Desire disguises itself as necessity. The Stoic must learn to separate what is essential from what is emotional. To want less is to command more. Every indulgence surrendered strengthens will. Epictetus warned, "Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desires, but by eliminating them." To command oneself is to remove the leash of craving. Self-command requires detachment from praise and insult alike. The Stoic remains unmoved by both. Compliment and criticism are equal tests of neutrality. To depend on praise is to be controlled by others. To react to insult is to be manipulated by them. The Stoic practices indifference, not from arrogance, but from equilibrium. Emotional neutrality is sovereignty. When insulted, the Stoic does not defend pride. They observe the reaction rising and let it dissolve. The moment passes, the principle remains. When praised, they do not inflate the ego. They stay centered in conduct. In both cases, emotion fails to corrupt decision. This steadiness makes them dangerous because they cannot be provoked or swayed. The third test is fear. Fear is the projection of future loss. It enslaves those who overvalue comfort. The Stoic dismantles fear through exposure. They face discomfort voluntarily until it loses control. What one faces repeatedly becomes familiar, and what is familiar loses its power to terrify. Through endurance, the Stoic becomes emotionally untouchable. Self-command transforms suffering into training. Pain becomes information. Discomfort becomes feedback. Instead of resisting experience, the Stoic interprets it. They ask, what can be learned here? What principle is being tested? Emotional neutrality is not coldness. It is refinement of perception. The mind no longer collapses under pressure, it expands within it. Anger is the emotion most incompatible with control. It replaces thought with impulse and distorts perception. The Stoic trains to interrupt anger at its earliest signal. A deep breath, a pause, a moment of silence. These are not passive acts, but weapons. They preserve order. The one who pauses controls the outcome. The one who reacts becomes a servant of circumstance. To maintain emotional neutrality, one must disarm expectation. Expectation is the seed of disappointment. The Stoic detaches from outcomes and focuses on conduct. They do not measure success by what happens, but by how they act. This detachment is the foundation of peace. When external conditions no longer define internal state, one is free. Neutrality does not mean indifference to life. It means precision of focus. The Stoic still feels, still acts, still cares, but never at the cost of composure. Emotion becomes fuel, not interference. The disciplined person channels it toward purpose. The energy of anger becomes determination. The energy of fear becomes alertness. The energy of sorrow becomes understanding. The world misreads neutrality as apathy. In truth, it is awareness so stable that emotion cannot distort it. The Stoic sees clearly because they are not blinded by reaction. To be emotionally neutral is to see things as they are, not as one wishes them to be. This clarity is the foundation of wisdom. Only the calm mind perceives truth without distortion. Self-command refines communication. The Stoic speaks slowly, listens fully, and rarely repeats themselves. Words become deliberate tools, not reactions. Silence is chosen as often as speech. In restraint lies strength. Every unspoken impulse preserves energy. Every measured response strengthens authority. The disciplined voice commands without volume. Emotional neutrality requires continuous maintenance. The Stoic practices daily recalibration through reflection. They review reactions of the day, where they held command, where they lost it. Awareness prevents decay. Without reflection, emotion regains control through subtle erosion. To remain neutral, one must inspect oneself relentlessly. Detachment from emotion creates endurance. The Stoic does not burn out because they no longer spend energy fighting their own feelings. Emotion is acknowledged, then dismissed. Energy is redirected toward execution. The disciplined person does not waste willpower managing volatility. They operate in stillness. Stillness is efficiency. Self-command builds a unique calmness under fire. In crisis, the Stoic appears motionless, but within that calm lies rapid calculation. Emotion slows thinking, neutrality accelerates it. Decisions made without panic carry precision. The Stoic thrives in environments that overwhelm others because they remain internally ordered. Their calm is not passive, it is tactical. Emotional neutrality is most tested in success. Pleasure can corrupt faster than pain. The Stoic trains to remain steady in both. They view achievement as temporary and loss as inevitable. Both are weather. The internal season remains unchanged. This consistency builds reliability. Others feel safe in their presence because they are predictable in peace. The body mirrors the mind. When the mind is still, the body conserves energy. When the mind is chaotic, the body burns it wastefully. The Stoic uses physical discipline to reinforce emotional control. Breathwork, posture, stillness. Each act reinforces command. The body becomes an instrument of calm. Physiology and philosophy merge. To rule emotion is to rule perception. Every event is neutral until the mind labels it. The Stoic removes judgment until facts remain. From this clarity arises strength. Epictetus taught that people are not disturbed by events, but by their opinions about events. Emotional neutrality begins by removing opinion, leaving only reality. Self-command destroys the illusion of control over others. The Stoic focuses solely on self-governance. The more one commands oneself, the less one seeks to command anyone else. This is why true authority feels peaceful. It does not impose, it radiates. The disciplined presence influences without intention. Neutrality brings precision in relationships. The Stoic does not cling or withdraw. They engage without dependence. Love, friendship, collaboration, all are approached from stability, not need. This detachment creates depth because it removes fear of loss. The Stoic gives freely, knowing that their peace does not depend on another. The mind under command no longer fears silence. Stillness becomes sanctuary. Solitude becomes recharge, not loneliness. The Stoic uses isolation to refine focus. In silence, they listen to the movement of thought and correct it. The untrained flee stillness because they cannot command it. The disciplined seek it because they do. Emotional neutrality also means control of inner dialogue. The Stoic monitors thought patterns like a commander reviewing soldiers. Every thought must align with order. Negative rumination is dismissed. Fantasy is redirected toward planning. Complaint is replaced by correction. Through this discipline, the mind becomes an instrument of action, not chaos. The disciplined person learns that emotions can coexist with calm. They feel deeply, yet act rationally. This coexistence is mastery. The Stoic can feel sorrow without collapse, anger without destruction, fear without retreat. Emotion passes through them like wind through a fortress, felt but never altering structure. To reach emotional neutrality, one must practice deliberate exposure to discomfort. Voluntary hardship is training for composure. Cold, fatigue, silence, fasting, each removes layers of dependency. When comfort no longer controls mood, emotion loses leverage. The Stoic becomes a constant amid variables. Self-command matures into serenity. Serenity is not lack of challenge, it is composure that endures challenge. The world does not calm, the individual does. Within this stillness, strength accumulates. The Stoic stands firm not because life is easy, but because their inner ground does not shift. Every emotional reaction carries a cost. Energy spent on anger, envy, or fear is energy lost from progress. The Stoic guards this energy as a resource. Emotional neutrality preserves it. The calm mind outlasts the agitated because it wastes nothing. Efficiency in emotion creates longevity in effort. The disciplined person reframes every emotional storm as proof of life's testing. They do not resent difficulty, they translate it into practice. Emotional volatility becomes training material. The mind transforms resistance into repetition, just as the body does in strength training. With each test, stability deepens. The Stoic accepts that emotional neutrality is never final. It is maintained through vigilance. Every day offers new temptations to react, to overvalue, to attach. The disciplined welcome these as reminders that mastery is continuous. The practice of neutrality refines character endlessly. When the world grows chaotic, the Stoic becomes still. When others panic, they calculate. When others despair, they act. This contrast defines command. Calmness becomes the signal of mastery. Emotional neutrality becomes leadership, an unspoken language of strength in uncertain times. Self-command ends with silence, not verbal silence but inner silence, the absence of internal conflict. The Stoic who achieves this no longer argues with emotion. They acknowledge it, understand it, and move forward. Reaction dies, direction remains. This is peace, motion without turmoil. To live with self-command is to transcend dependence on mood. The Stoic acts from principle, whether joyful or broken, confident or uncertain. Action defines them, not emotion. This constancy makes them unshakable. Emotional neutrality is not detachment from life. It is total engagement without chaos. This is the discipline of command. To stand inside the storm and remain unmoved. To act with precision while the world wavers. To feel without surrendering control. The Stoic seeks not comfort, but clarity. To see the world, themselves, and their emotions as they are, without distortion. In that clarity lies ultimate strength. This is the calm dominion of the self, the victory of order over reaction, the triumph of mind over motion. Mastery begins as discipline, but must evolve into permanence. The Stoic trains until command becomes instinct. The goal is not to think about control, but to exist within it. When discipline transforms into nature, every act aligns effortlessly with principle. This state cannot be imitated or borrowed. It must be forged through years of repetition until the difference between effort and identity disappears. In the early stages, mastery feels constructed. It demands attention, correction, and continuous recalibration. The mind questions, adjusts, and wrestles with itself. The Stoic endures this friction until the system stabilizes. Once internal order becomes consistent, friction fades. The disciplined person no longer maintains control, they embody it. The process dissolves into presence. The permanence of mastery is not a peak, but a plateau of calm power. It does not fluctuate with mood or circumstance. The Stoic moves through life with the same posture in triumph and in hardship. Consistency becomes the signature of strength. Others rely on emotion to initiate action. The mastered rely on structure. The distinction defines the rare from the ordinary. At this level, the Stoic no longer trains against weakness. They train to preserve sharpness. Maintenance replaces struggle. Every repetition polishes what was once built through pain. The effort remains, but the resistance is gone. The individual becomes a mechanism of precision, governed by principle, sustained by purpose. Permanence requires simplicity. Complexity invites decay. The Stoic refines their system until nothing unnecessary remains. Each day unfolds like a practiced ritual. Action follows intention without interruption. This reduction is not limitation, it is liberation. The fewer moving parts the mind must command, the more stable its structure becomes. When mastery becomes nature, the concept of motivation disappears. The Stoic acts without debate. They do not consult emotion or seek approval. They live according to law, a personal constitution built through repetition. This law does not bend under fatigue or temptation. It governs thought, movement, and reaction with quiet authority. To reach permanence, one must destroy the addiction to novelty. The mind must find satisfaction in repetition itself. The Stoic no longer chases stimulation. They find meaning in the precision of the familiar. The same workout, the same meditation, the same structure. Each becomes sacred. Mastery thrives on the eternal return of disciplined acts. The permanence of mastery also requires acceptance of imperfection. Perfectionism is the enemy of permanence because it fuels restlessness. The Stoic aims for precision, not flawlessness. They understand that mastery is not about errorless performance, but about consistent recovery. Each deviation is corrected immediately. Each return strengthens the foundation. When discipline becomes nature, emotion becomes function. Fear sharpens awareness. Pain heightens attention. Desire energizes pursuit. The Stoic does not suppress these signals. They convert them. Every internal state becomes useful data. Emotional neutrality does not mean emotional absence. It means total control of interpretation. The mastered mind operates on timeless rhythm. Each day feels identical, yet meaningful. Routine no longer drains energy, it generates it. Repetition builds momentum that eliminates hesitation. This internal rhythm forms a personal gravity, drawing order into every area of life. The Stoic becomes predictable in discipline, but unpredictable in strategy. To sustain mastery, the Stoic protects stillness. Silence becomes a daily necessity. Within stillness, awareness recalibrates. The disciplined person sits in quiet, not to escape the world, but to strengthen control of perception. Noise erodes precision, silence restores it. This is how mastery breathes, in the calm between exertions. The permanence of mastery is built on the eradication of extremes. Excess enthusiasm is as dangerous as despair. The Stoic walks the middle line, steady, grounded, deliberate. Emotional balance sustains long-term performance. Mastery collapses when emotion overruns reason. The mind must remain the axis of the system, unmoving while everything else turns. A mastered life requires an economy of motion. Every act serves a purpose. Every decision reinforces alignment. The Stoic wastes nothing, no energy, no attention, no time. They understand that mastery decays through distraction. Every unnecessary action divides focus and weakens precision. Efficiency becomes an ethical duty. When discipline hardens into nature, the need for external reinforcement disappears. The Stoic no longer relies on accountability, environment, or reward. They are self-sustaining. This independence is the mark of permanence. The external world can change. Their conduct cannot. They remain constant amid fluctuation, an unmoved mover in motion. Permanence is also spiritual endurance. The Stoic accepts the inevitability of loss, fatigue, and impermanence in all things, yet remains whole. They understand that mastery is not about preservation of comfort, but about preservation of form. Even in decline, their conduct remains ordered. Dignity replaces desire, structure replaces struggle. The mastered person recognizes the limits of control. They no longer attempt to dominate everything, only themselves. This focus produces serenity. Control is concentrated, not dispersed. The more the Stoic narrows command to what is internal, the more invincible they become. Nothing external can violate inner law. When mastery becomes nature, the Stoic no longer needs reminders. They no longer require discipline to act. The act and the actor merge. The daily structure moves on its own momentum. This is why mastery appears effortless from the outside. It is not effortless. It is habitual perfection. Each movement is the residue of thousands of deliberate repetitions. To preserve permanence, the Stoic maintains humility. Arrogance corrupts order. The mastered see themselves as apprentices of eternity, never finished, always refining. Pride introduces stagnation. Humility preserves openness to correction. Mastery that believes itself complete begins to decay. The Stoic sustains mastery by training through fatigue. Comfort cannot be trusted. The mind must learn to execute when the body resists. Fatigue reveals the difference between the disciplined and the occasional. The mastered do not withdraw when tired. They adapt form to maintain continuity. Endurance becomes elegance. When the body obeys the mind without question, mastery has become physiological. The reflex of order replaces the habit of hesitation. The Stoic walks, breathes, and acts in alignment. This embodiment is the true permanence, discipline that has migrated from thought into muscle memory. The permanence of mastery is not about intensity, it is about longevity. Anyone can sustain discipline for a season, few can live it as a lifetime pattern. The Stoic design systems that survive emotion, circumstance, and time. They think in decades, not days. Their life becomes architecture, not performance. Every mastered individual must guard against entropy. Success breeds comfort, comfort breeds decline. The Stoic avoids this cycle by maintaining deliberate difficulty. They impose resistance even when none is required. By training under self-imposed friction, they remain sharp. Challenge becomes preservation. The permanent state of mastery demands awareness of subtle drift. Habits weaken quietly. Standards erode invisibly. The Stoic inspects their structure daily to detect small fractures before they spread. Maintenance is vigilance disguised as peace. Stability is not static, it is active correction. When discipline becomes nature, identity transcends effort. The Stoic no longer says, "I will try," or "I must." They simply act. Speech reduces, execution increases. The life of mastery is quiet because there is nothing left to prove. Their actions have become law. Their silence has become presence. At the height of mastery, time slows. The Stoic perceives cause and consequence in advance. Decisions stretch beyond the moment. Every action carries foresight. The mind trained in discipline sees patterns others overlook. Predictability of self grants, clarity of world. Nothing surprises the mastered. They have rehearsed every outcome. To live in permanence is to become immune to chaos. Change no longer destabilizes because the Stoic moves within their own axis. Their inner law governs their responses automatically. When the external world convulses, they adjust seamlessly. They do not resist, they adapt without distortion. The permanence of mastery produces calm power. The Stoic does not display strength, they emanate it. People sense the weight of their composure, the density of someone who cannot be shaken. Their quietness commands more than noise ever could. Presence becomes influence. The final stage of discipline is self-erasure. The Stoic no longer identifies with effort. The boundary between doer and deed dissolves. Training ceases to feel like training. Work ceases to feel like work. It all becomes existence, a continuous act of execution without resistance. This is peace without passivity, motion without friction. When mastery becomes permanent, legacy forms naturally. Others see the structure and imitate it. The Stoic teaches without speaking. Their behavior becomes curriculum. Their life becomes doctrine. Influence extends beyond intent. It becomes the silent transmission of order. The permanence of mastery means that even in failure, structure holds. The Stoic can lose everything and rebuild identically because the blueprint lives within. External loss does not alter internal order. This is invincibility, to be untouched by ruin because form cannot be destroyed. True permanence transcends ambition. The Stoic no longer seeks progress, they seek preservation of alignment. The measure of mastery is not how much is gained, but how little is lost. Each day lived without deviation is victory. The one who remains aligned longest becomes eternal in conduct. In the end, the permanence of mastery is quiet. There is no applause, no finish line, no climax. There is only sustained order. The Stoic wakes, acts, reflects, and rests in perfect rhythm. The day mirrors the next, not through stagnation, but through completeness. When discipline becomes nature, time loses meaning. Each moment fulfills purpose entirely. This is the final form of discipline, when mastery becomes life itself, when the individual ceases to try and begins simply to be, when conduct and existence are identical. The Stoic reaches this point not through intensity, but through eternity, through the unbroken continuity of principle. Discipline began as force, mastery ends as nature. Permanence is peace earned through repetition made eternal. Consistency is not sustained by willpower alone, it is sustained by architecture. The Stoic understands that willpower is a limited resource, but design is permanent. To force consistency for an entire year, one must build a structure that removes the need for constant internal negotiation. Routine must become environmental, not emotional. The mind cannot be trusted to maintain momentum if the world around it allows distraction. Discipline must be built into the walls of one's life. The foundation of consistency begins with control of time. Every hour that is not claimed by purpose is claimed by chaos. The Stoic treats the day like territory to be defended. Morning belongs to order, evening belongs to reflection, and everything in between is divided with intention. No segment is left undefined. Undefined hours breed confusion. Defined hours breed mastery. The consistent person organizes the day as a soldier organizes battle positions, no space left open for weakness to infiltrate. To force consistency, one must create triggers that initiate action before the mind intervenes. A disciplined routine starts not with thought but with cue. The Stoic designs these cues deliberately, a set time, a set environment, a specific signal that commands the body into motion. When a person acts automatically upon these signals, consistency becomes a reflex. The less one must decide, the more one will execute. The environment must mirror the discipline one desires. Objects, lighting, temperature, noise, everything either strengthens or weakens order. The Stoic arranges surroundings like a strategist arranges defenses. Tools of focus must be visible. Distractions must be buried or eliminated. Each object has a purpose or it leaves. The consistent person does not rely on inspiration to act. They rely on the system to trigger behavior. Consistency fails when emotion becomes the governing force. Mood is temporary, principle is permanent. The Stoic removes mood from the equation. They act regardless of feeling, because feeling is not a factor in duty. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do what is right, the rest doesn't matter." This clarity eliminates the emotional noise that weakens routine. To force consistency is to obey principle without hesitation. Discipline collapses when standards fluctuate. The Stoic sets fixed rules. Wake at the same hour, train at the same time, reflect at night. These rules become sacred law. Every deviation requires justification under reason, not emotion. Consistency thrives on predictability. The one who lives without schedule lives without structure. The schedule is not imprisonment, it is armor. When discipline weakens, the Stoic does not retreat. They simplify. Complexity invites failure. The consistent person reduces their routine to essential actions that can be maintained indefinitely. Overextension breeds burnout. The wise keep few tasks, but perform them flawlessly. Mastery of fewer acts produces greater strength than half completion of many. To remain consistent through the year, the Stoic builds systems of feedback. They measure progress not through emotion, but through data. Journals, logs, checklists, these become instruments of clarity. Emotion cannot distort numbers. Progress measured objectively reveals truth without flattery. The disciplined study their own performance as a philosopher studies human nature, calmly, critically, without pride. The consistent person anticipates fatigue. They prepare for it before it arrives. Rest is scheduled, not improvised. Energy is preserved through deliberate recovery. The Stoic does not confuse rest with indulgence. Rest exists to extend endurance, not to escape effort. When the system accounts for exhaustion, momentum never halts completely. Every year destroys the inconsistent through distraction. The Stoic must guard against it with the same intensity they guard against vice. Each notification, each interruption, each pointless debate drains momentum. The consistent person practices digital discipline, closing the doors through which distraction enters. To protect focus is to protect life itself. Force requires reinforcement. The Stoic surrounds themselves with reminders of duty, quotes, symbols, visual anchors. The environment becomes a reflection of the standard. When the mind wavers, the surroundings recall it to order. This is not superstition, it is strategy. What one sees daily imprints deeply. The consistent build temples of focus around themselves. To sustain effort for a year, the Stoic must understand rhythm. Discipline cannot exist as unbroken intensity. It must alternate between pressure and recovery. The mind cannot burn indefinitely. The disciplined plan cycles, days of full exertion followed by reflection. This rhythm prevents collapse and keeps discipline alive. Balance here is not indulgence, it is strategy for endurance. The consistent mind views failure differently. A missed day is not collapse, it is deviation. Immediate correction restores momentum. The Stoic acts as an engineer repairing machinery, without emotion, without guilt. They fix the system and continue. Emotion wastes energy, correction preserves it. Failure is not an identity, but a signal to recalibrate. To force consistency, the Stoic must become immune to external pace. Society rewards immediacy, but discipline respects compounding. Small acts repeated daily defeat bursts of intensity. The Stoic lives on a different clock, slow, steady, relentless. Each day adds one brick, each week forms one wall. A year of unbroken structure becomes a fortress against regression. The modern person waits for the right feeling to begin. The Stoic begins regardless. Action generates feeling. Hesitation kills it. The mind adapts to movement. Consistency is not born from clarity, it creates it. The person who acts before they are ready becomes ready through repetition. Readiness is a consequence, not a prerequisite. To remain consistent through uncertainty, one must train for adaptation. The Stoic adjusts form, not standard. If the day changes, the discipline shifts shape but never disappears. The workout shortens but still occurs. The writing moves location but still happens. The action may alter, but the commitment remains intact. Flexibility protects consistency from disruption. The consistent life requires isolation from noise. The Stoic cultivates solitude as a source of order. Silence restores direction. Reflection refines method. The disciplined person spends time alone, not from withdrawal, but from maintenance. Solitude is where systems are sharpened. Without it, one drifts into reactive living. Every act of repetition must be connected to purpose. Without purpose, repetition becomes mechanical and lifeless. The Stoic ties every habit to principle. Training becomes the pursuit of strength. Reading becomes the pursuit of wisdom. Work becomes the pursuit of service. Purpose transforms consistency from mechanical survival into moral command. The year will test conviction, motivation will fade, enthusiasm will rot. The Stoic expects this decay. When it arrives, they rely on discipline, not emotion. They act through dullness. Each day of dull effort is worth 10 of inspired effort because it proves self-governance. The mind learns obedience through repetition when inspiration is gone. Consistency thrives on preparation. The Stoic ends each day by structuring the next. The night becomes strategy. When the morning comes, there is no thought, only execution. This pre-planning eliminates the weakest moment of the day, the hesitation between intention and action. The consistent remove that hesitation entirely. The person who forces consistency must learn detachment from outcomes. They focus on input, not reward. The Stoic understands that effort is the only controllable variable. The outcome is indifferent. Detachment frees energy from anxiety. The one who focuses solely on the act is never discouraged by delay. They move, and time obeys. The consistent year is built on rituals of accountability. The Stoic checks progress weekly, measures conduct monthly, and recalibrates quarterly. Reflection becomes command inspection. Systems evolve, standards remain fixed. The disciplined treat their life like an empire, auditing every process, fortifying every weakness. The Stoic forces consistency by confronting self-deception. The mind will invent reasons for leniency. The disciplined dismantle these excuses before they grow roots. They track behavior, not intent. They measure reality, not desire. To know oneself fully is to know when the mind begins to negotiate its own standards, and to silence it immediately. Momentum must be maintained through symbolic beginnings. Each month, each week, each sunrise, a reset. The Stoic uses time not as a measure, but as ignition. Every new cycle is an opportunity to prove continuity. The consistent person sees each morning as a fresh oath of conduct, a renewal of allegiance to order. Consistency requires faith in accumulation. The Stoic trusts that invisible progress compounds beneath perception. Each act seems small, but each contributes to the invisible architecture of transformation. The impatient see nothing and quit. The disciplined continue and awaken one day to irreversible change. The difference is patience weaponized by repetition. To remain consistent for a year, one must confront the illusion of balance. Balance often disguises avoidance. The Stoic replaces it with hierarchy. Some things matter, most do not. Energy is reserved for the essential. Focus must be prioritized with brutality. The consistent person does not chase harmony, they chase alignment. When fatigue threatens, the Stoic draws strength from identity. They remind themselves, I am the kind of person who follows through. Identity sustains action when motivation fails. Consistency without identity collapses. Consistency built on identity endures. The disciplined act not because they must, but because anything else would be betrayal. The environment of consistency is also social. The Stoic chooses associations that reflect their standard. Weak minds erode order, strong minds reinforce it. Every conversation shapes mental architecture. The consistent person curates relationships with precision. Loyalty is given to those who honor discipline through conduct, not through words. To sustain a consistent year, the Stoic must detach from comparison. Comparison corrupts rhythm. Each person walks a different tempo. The disciplined look only inward. Their benchmark is yesterday's performance. External competition invites instability. Internal comparison breeds refinement. Progress becomes a private covenant. Discipline must also extend to thought. The Stoic monitors internal language. Self-doubt, complaint, justification. These are viruses of consistency. Each time the mind indulges them, order weakens. The disciplined person corrects inner dialogue immediately. They speak to themselves as a commander speaks to soldiers, with clarity, firmness, and finality. Consistency requires reward redefinition. The Stoic does not chase pleasure but satisfaction from control. Each completed routine is its own reward. Every day of obedience reinforces confidence. External recognition becomes irrelevant. Internal proof replaces applause. This autonomy converts consistency into self-respect. The consistent year ends where it began, with force. Force is not aggression, it is precision. It is the ability to move without waiting for permission. Every day the Stoic rises, they recommit to motion. Each repetition reinforces permanence. Each act renews command. The cycle never breaks because the law is written within. To force consistency this year is to live as one continuous motion of discipline, to wake and move before thought, to act before doubt, to execute before emotion. This life is not glamorous, it is not easy, it is relentless, but it is the only path that leads to self-respect, mastery, and peace. The Stoic does not hope to be consistent. They become it, one repetition at a time, until action itself is their nature and hesitation no longer exists. Momentum is the soul of consistency. It is the invisible force that transforms routine into permanence. The Stoic understands that once motion begins, the greatest threat is not failure, but interruption. The disciplined life depends on the continuous transfer of energy from one act to the next, day after day, until progress becomes self-sustaining. Momentum removes the need for motivation because movement itself creates strength. The first law of sustained momentum is continuation without hesitation. The moment between tasks is the most dangerous. That pause is where weakness enters. The Stoic moves immediately from one act of order to the next. The transition is deliberate, smooth, and silent. There is no mental negotiation, no indulgence in delay. Continuity is treated as sacred. Once motion starts, stopping is betrayal. To maintain momentum through the year, one must learn to think in sequences, not events. Every action connects to the next. Each task fuels another. The Stoic arranges their life as a circuit. Energy flows without leakage. When one habit strengthens another, the system compounds. Training sharpens the mind for work. Work builds satisfaction for reflection. Reflection renews clarity for training again. Consistency becomes a loop of reinforcement. Momentum is born from rhythm. Rhythm is born from repetition. The Stoic builds rhythm by assigning each act a fixed place in time. When every day repeats with precision, the body learns timing faster than thought. Routine becomes a kind of music, measured, unwavering, inevitable. The disciplined person moves through the hours with the same cadence as a soldier, marching in step with eternity. When momentum is lost, the mind invents complexity to avoid accountability. The Stoic simplifies. They do not rebuild through emotion, they rebuild through return. The formula never changes. Begin again immediately. There is no apology, no delay, no contemplation. The reset is instant. The faster one returns to order, the less ground is lost. The secret of sustained momentum is not perfection, it is recovery speed. Momentum dies when the body becomes overworked and the mind becomes under-rested. The Stoic prevents this by alternating exertion and restoration with precision. Sleep is ritual, not luxury. Stillness is fuel, not waste. The consistent person understands that recovery is not the opposite of discipline. It is its continuation. Rest serves momentum, not resistance. The Stoic studies their own energy. As a craftsman studies material, they learn when focus peaks, when fatigue begins, when renewal is required. They design days around this rhythm. The result is efficiency that feels like instinct. Momentum is not the absence of fatigue. It is mastery of energy distribution. Each action draws from reserves strategically, never recklessly. To preserve momentum, one must neutralize emotional interference. Doubt, guilt, frustration, these are weight added to motion. The Stoic releases them immediately. Reflection is used for correction, not rumination. Emotion is measured, processed, and dismissed. Movement continues regardless. The consistent person does not require emotional alignment to act. They act to create alignment. Sustained motion requires detachment from speed. Momentum is not acceleration, it is constancy. The Stoic moves at a steady pace, avoiding burnout disguised as progress. They understand that fast growth is unstable growth. The disciplined prioritize endurance over display. What matters is not how quickly they advance, but how long they can maintain force. The Stoic builds momentum through integrity. Every promise kept reinforces motion. Every excuse erodes it. Momentum is moral before it is mechanical. Self-trust is the engine that keeps the system alive. The person who trusts their own word does not need external pressure to act. They move because to do otherwise would violate identity. To maintain momentum, one must master transitions. Each day must end in closure and begin in clarity. The Stoic ends the day by documenting completion and preparing the next. There is no carryover of confusion. The morning arrives already structured. This seamless handoff prevents stagnation. Continuity becomes mechanical, not emotional. Distraction is the greatest enemy of momentum. Every interruption, however small, splinters attention. The Stoic trains to protect deep work as a sacred state. Devices are silenced, conversations minimized, boundaries enforced. They understand that every minute lost to distraction requires 10 to recover. Protection of attention is protection of speed. Momentum is strengthened through visible progress. The Stoic tracks results. They chart improvement to maintain awareness of growth. Evidence reinforces belief. Belief reinforces action. The loop tightens. Each small victory adds weight to the motion. The consistent accumulate quiet proof until confidence replaces motivation entirely. The disciplined person learns to convert resistance into propulsion. When obstacles appear, they do not pause. They redirect force around or through them. Resistance becomes fuel, not friction. The Stoic never asks why the obstacle exists. They ask how to keep moving despite it. Every adaptation strengthens resilience. Every challenge reinforces continuity. Momentum demands automation of behavior. The Stoic systematizes as much as possible. Meals, training, work cycles, reflection, all follow patterns. Decision fatigue is the enemy of energy. The fewer choices required, the more energy remains for execution. Automation transforms daily life into an operating rhythm that sustains itself even when motivation fades. To sustain consistency through fatigue, the Stoic adopts the philosophy of minimum viable progress. Each day must contain at least one forward motion, however small. Even minimal execution maintains continuity. Skipping breaks the chain. Small acts compound into large outcomes when uninterrupted. The consistent person prioritizes continuity over intensity. The Stoic trains not only for progress, but for resilience against relapse. They expect setbacks. They design recovery paths in advance. When failure occurs, there is no panic, only protocol. The plan is followed. Momentum resumes. This predictability transforms chaos into order. Control is never fully lost because the framework guarantees return. To maintain momentum, the Stoic reframes fatigue as a signal of growth, not decay. Exhaustion becomes information. They analyze its cause and adjust load without quitting. Fatigue becomes the feedback loop that guides optimization. Through this relationship with discomfort, progress becomes continuous rather than sporadic. Sustained momentum also requires control of narrative. The Stoic speaks to themselves in motion-oriented language. They do not say, "I must start again." They say, "I am continuing." The difference alters psychology. Continuation preserves identity. Restart erases it. The consistent person protects their sense of forward direction through linguistic precision. The Stoic integrates reward within repetition. They find satisfaction not in outcome, but in process. Each act reinforces itself. Progress becomes its own motivation. When repetition becomes rewarding, discipline becomes self-sustaining. This conversion of duty into satisfaction is the alchemy of endurance. To maintain movement through the unpredictable year, one must plan for chaos. The Stoic builds redundancy into their systems. Backup plans, alternate routines, flexible scheduling, each ensures continuity when disruption occurs. Momentum is protected not by rigidity, but by adaptability. The system bends, but does not break. Momentum must evolve with identity. As the Stoic grows, so must the structure. The practices that once challenged may become effortless. At that point, difficulty must be increased deliberately. The absence of challenge breeds stagnation. The disciplined person introduces resistance to sustain engagement. Growth is maintenance. To prevent mental fatigue, the Stoic introduces controlled variation within structure. Small changes in environment, time or sequence refresh focus without breaking pattern. Variety within order sustains vitality. This strategic modulation ensures that routine remains alive, not mechanical. The Stoic learns to manage external speed. The world accelerates endlessly. Noise and novelty multiply daily. The disciplined move at their own controlled pace. They refuse to be pulled into reactive motion. This autonomy preserves energy. Momentum born from inner control is immune to external velocity. Consistency through a year requires emotional detachment from progress. The Stoic acts regardless of perceived growth. Momentum does not depend on visible results. It depends on obedience to rhythm. Even when the surface seems stagnant, the undercurrent of motion continues. Progress unseen is still progress. Faith in process sustains continuity. To preserve focus under monotony, the Stoic shifts perspective from the immediate to the eternal. Each act is viewed as contribution to the larger structure of self. Daily effort becomes brickwork in the cathedral of identity. When vision extends beyond the moment, boredom disappears. Meaning sustains momentum where motivation cannot. Momentum demands the destruction of self-pity. The Stoic refuses indulgence in fatigue, complaint, or regret. These are anchors disguised as thoughts. The disciplined replace them with clarity. What is the next action? Self-pity interrupts. Action restores. Every return to movement dissolves weakness. To keep motion alive across months, the Stoic must maintain purity of intent. Ambition can corrupt consistency by replacing discipline with greed. The goal is mastery, not display. The purpose is refinement, not recognition. When intention stays clean, momentum remains moral. The movement serves the principle, not the ego. The Stoic cultivates momentum through morning precision. The first act after waking defines the trajectory of the day. Small hesitation multiplies, immediate action compounds. The consistent rise into duty as if commanded by law. Each morning victory carries the weight of all that follows. The first motion is destiny in miniature. Sustained momentum also depends on evening review. Reflection closes the loop of the day. The Stoic records victories and failures dispassionately. Awareness refines method. The next morning begins sharper. This rhythm of execution and reflection transforms time into a wheel of continuous evolution. To live in sustained momentum is to eliminate the distance between thought and act. The Stoic acts as soon as clarity forms. Every delay weakens conviction. Immediate execution builds psychological strength. The person who moves without hesitation trains the mind to trust its own command. This trust is the foundation of unstoppable progress. Momentum must eventually become identity. When motion defines existence, rest feels unnatural. The Stoic reaches a state where doing nothing requires effort and acting feels like peace. This inversion marks the completion of discipline. The mind and body have merged into one continuous expression of forward motion. To maintain this level of movement, the Stoic remains humble. Pride invites stagnation. They treat each day as initiation, not mastery. There is no summit, only ascent. This humility keeps motion alive. When progress becomes routine, the wise do not slow, they deepen. The essence of sustained momentum is inevitability. The Stoic moves so consistently that stopping no longer feels possible. The structure of life enforces motion. Every act connects to another. Every day reinforces the last. This state cannot be forced quickly. It must be built gradually through relentless repetition until motion itself becomes the default state. To force consistency through sustained momentum is to live beyond hesitation. It is to become the embodiment of movement, a system of order, a rhythm of purpose. Every breath contributes to continuity. Every action reinforces stability. The Stoic does not wait for the year to grant progress. They create it, hour by hour, motion by motion, until the rhythm of effort becomes eternal. Consistency is the purest expression of strength. It does not shout, it does not display, it simply continues. To force oneself to be consistent this year is to declare a quiet revolution, a refusal to live by impulse, distraction, or mood. The Stoic understands that power is not found in moments of intensity, but in the unbroken line of repetition. Each day performed with precision becomes a link in a chain that cannot be broken. The mind that commands itself each morning builds an empire of order. The first action of the day defines the trajectory of the entire cycle. When one rises on command, every other decision becomes easier. Momentum accumulates silently. The Stoic does not begin each day searching for inspiration. They begin by obeying their internal law. Obedience to principle replaces dependence on emotion. To complete a year in discipline, one must live as though each day were a single move in a long campaign. The victories are small but cumulative. The Stoic does not expect immediate transformation. They respect the slowness of mastery. Each repetition, each moment of restraint, each fulfilled duty compounds into a life that cannot be reversed. The future belongs to those who execute in silence. Consistency is not about speed, it is about direction. The undisciplined oscillate between effort and collapse, wasting years in the loop of starting over. The Stoic sustains movement in one line forward. Even when progress feels invisible, motion continues. Invisible progress is still progress. The one who does not stop eventually surpasses all who sprint and rest. To force consistency is to surrender to structure. The Stoic does not trust the mind to improvise. They set rules, schedules, and systems that remove the need for decision. The mind is freed for deeper thought because the framework handles behavior. Structure is freedom. The paradox of discipline is that limits create space. A defined path eliminates chaos. Every act of consistency builds credibility with oneself. The disciplined person learns to believe their own command. Each time they act without hesitation, trust deepens. Self-trust is the foundation of power. Without it, no achievement holds. The Stoic reinforces this trust daily until obedience becomes instinct. A person who trusts themselves cannot be defeated. There will be seasons of fatigue. Consistency does not mean constant energy, it means constant return. The Stoic does not seek perpetual motivation, they seek reliability. When willpower fades, they rely on identity. When emotion fluctuates, they rely on structure. This is how motion survives weakness. The consistent are not tireless, they are anchored. The year tests every resolution. It erodes the will of the impatient and reveals the endurance of the disciplined. The Stoic expects this erosion. They prepare for it. Each week, they renew their standard. Each month, they refine their system. The passage of time strengthens the structure rather than weakens it. The disciplined grow harder as the months unfold. To live by consistency is to live by truth. The Stoic measures themselves not by intention but by execution. There are no stories, no excuses, no explanations, only results. What is done is who they are. This ruthless honesty is not cruelty, it is clarity. A life measured by conduct is a life without confusion. Every distraction, indulgence, and delay demands a price. The Stoic knows this and pays none of them. They do not trade discipline for comfort or order for entertainment. They understand that everything costs time, and time is the only currency that cannot be regained. Consistency is how time is preserved. To act daily is to invest existence in its highest form. The world romanticizes passion, but passion fades. The Stoic prefers endurance. Passion ignites quickly and dies as quickly. Endurance outlasts the flame. The disciplined treat passion as a spark, not as fuel. The fire of discipline burns colder, steadier, eternal. To force consistency is to accept that most progress happens without excitement, without applause, and without visible reward. A consistent year demands emotional neutrality. The Stoic moves through triumph and frustration with the same expression. They do not celebrate early or despair prematurely. The rhythm of order continues regardless of weather. Each day demands the same precision. This constancy creates an inner gravity, a calmness that cannot be imitated. The disciplined person does not chase balance. They pursue alignment. Balance seeks comfort. Alignment seeks purpose. Every action, thought, and environment must serve the central objective. Anything misaligned is removed. The year becomes a straight line of purpose, cutting through noise. To live this way is to move with absolute clarity. Consistency must be tied to principle, not outcome. The Stoic acts from duty, not desire. Results are secondary to conduct. When the act itself is the reward, fatigue cannot break the system. Purpose becomes renewable energy. The person who serves principle never runs out of fuel. Each day is both execution and fulfillment. To remain consistent, one must protect simplicity. Complexity destroys order. The Stoic narrows their focus to essentials. 3 priorities dominate the day: physical order, mental order, moral order. Each reinforces the others. When the day is complete, nothing feels wasted. Simplicity magnifies force. Consistency reveals character under pressure. When comfort disappears, habits remain. The Stoic measures strength not by how they act in ease, but by how little their conduct changes under strain. The disciplined are recognizable in crisis. Their movements are the same. Order does not panic, it endures. The year belongs to those who endure boredom without breaking. Boredom is the test that destroys most ambition. The Stoic transforms boredom into meditation. Each repetitive act becomes an opportunity to observe the self, refine the form, and deepen focus. When others quit out of monotony, the consistent enter mastery. To force consistency is to eliminate negotiation. The disciplined person does not ask, "Should I?" They ask, "How will I?" The question of permission is replaced by the question of execution. This single shift removes hesitation from every decision. Each day becomes a matter of strategy, not will. Consistency converts chaos into law. A disordered person lives in reaction. A disciplined person lives in rhythm. Their lives are predictable, not because they lack freedom, but because they possess control. Predictability is stability. Stability breeds progress. Progress becomes peace. When fatigue rises, the Stoic remembers, the body obeys the mind. Pain, doubt, and distraction are signals to continue, not to stop. The command remains the same. The longer one holds motion against resistance, the stronger the will becomes. Endurance sharpens identity. The person who can continue under fatigue can continue under anything. The consistent learn to love the quiet of progress. There is no spectacle in their work, no announcement, no declaration, just the rhythm of repetition. The Stoic finds peace in this anonymity. Glory fades, consistency remains. A year of steady execution will outlive 1,000 bursts of intensity. To stay consistent, one must detach from external validation. Praise distracts as much as criticism. Both remove focus from the process. The Stoic acts privately, with indifference to attention. Discipline is not performance, it is obedience to an internal law that requires no audience. Every consistent life requires isolation from noise. The Stoic seeks solitude not as retreat, but as refinement. Silence clarifies, noise dilutes. A person who spends time alone learns to command themselves. The voice of discipline grows loudest when the world grows quiet. Isolation is where mastery matures. As the year unfolds, the Stoic measures time differently. They do not count months, they count completions. Each finished task is a unit of existence. The more tasks completed with integrity, the more meaningful the year becomes. Success is not measured in outcomes, but in consistency of execution. The disciplined person resists extremes. They neither overexert in enthusiasm nor collapse in despair. The middle path of precision produces longevity. A year lived without extremes is a year of control. The Stoic remains steady, motion constant, mind still, progress inevitable. When weakness tempts retreat, the Stoic invokes memory. They recall all previous efforts and refuse to dishonor them by stopping. Each completed day demands the next. Quitting wastes every sacrifice that came before. This awareness converts history into force. Momentum becomes moral duty. To force consistency is to take responsibility for rhythm. The Stoic does not wait for opportunity, they build schedule. They do not wait for motivation, they build motion. They do not wait for results, they build repetition. Every element of success becomes deliberate. Fortune is replaced by structure. The consistent person lives in a state of quiet readiness. They are prepared for difficulty, indifferent to comfort, immune to distraction. Life's unpredictability cannot penetrate their structure. Their peace is not situational, it is systemic. Discipline turns existence into armor. A full year of consistency alters perception. The Stoic begins to see themselves as a different being, not one who hopes to change, but one who cannot be undone. The mind recognizes its own authority. This transformation is irreversible. The one who completes the year under command never returns to drift. Consistency reshapes identity into permanence. The self becomes defined by endurance. The world may fluctuate, the seasons may shift, but the disciplined remain constant. They move through life like a fixed star, steady, silent, exact. This constancy inspires others not through speech, but through example. The disciplined person learns that mastery is not an event, it is a condition. Consistency is not a temporary project, it is a way of being. To maintain it is to live in harmony with law. This law is not external, it is self-imposed. The mind becomes both ruler and ruled, enforcing its own order endlessly. To force consistency is to embrace inevitability. Each act repeated daily becomes nature. What begins as effort becomes instinct. The Stoic who trains long enough ceases to struggle. They do not need to push anymore, they are pulled forward by identity. The act of discipline becomes the act of living. The year will end as it began, in silence. No fanfare, no ceremony, only continuity. The Stoic reflects not with pride, but with certainty. They have proven something no words can capture, that order can defeat chaos, that effort can defeat emotion, that repetition can defeat time. Consistency has become permanence. To force yourself to be consistent this year is to win the only war that matters, the war against the undisciplined self. It is to choose command over drift, structure over confusion, and direction over decay. The Stoic does not hope for better conditions. They create them through conduct. Each sunrise repeats the same truth. Strength is not born in passion, but in persistence. Each day of obedience adds weight to character until nothing within can break. In the end, consistency is destiny. What one repeats becomes reality. To act with discipline daily is to shape existence deliberately. The Stoic who endures the year unchanged by weakness emerges untouchable, a living embodiment of order. Their motion continues beyond the calendar. Their will has outlived time. This is the purpose of discipline, to move until effort becomes eternity.